We'll be to you in just a second. Good morning, everybody. Nice to have you with us. Awfully glad you could tune in. You know, none of my college buddies were surprised when I got married at the tender age of 23 because I was always the world's worst at the bar scene. When my wife and I met, fell in love, and decided that we wanted to pursue life as a pair, I was more than ready. And you know what I've since found out? That there are a lot more people out there in the same boat than you would ever imagine. Enter the American Bachelor Register, 100 or so men who are single, and by agreeing to be in this book are proud of the fact that they're single. They want you to know what they're like and what type of women they're looking for. We have a couple with them today, but first I want to introduce you to the woman who's responsible, along with her friends, for compiling this little list. She is Celeste Fremon, freelance author and editor for Glamour, 17, Teen, and Playgirl magazines formerly. She now lives in Pacific Palisades, California. She specializes in women's interests. Celeste, thank you for coming.
Thanks,
I'm looking forward to talking with you. And today, a couple of the guys who are listed in this book, they're both Washingtonians, and I want to introduce them to you right now. Our first one is Fletcher Reel, and Erica, that's right, get a nice shot of this guy, because this is what it says about Fletcher in this book. He's 28 years old. He's executive assistant and superintendent of documents in the government printing office, and this is the first paragraph in Fletcher's bio in this book. Fletcher Reel is perfect. Perfect. We did not realize that there were any true blue all-American boys out there anymore. We didn't reckon on Fletcher. There you have him, Fletcher Reel. We're going to be meeting him in just a moment. Fletcher, we're glad you could come. Also, Mark Bruzonsky is with us. Welcome, Mark. Mark is 35 years old. He's a consultant and journalist on international affairs. He admittedly enjoys his woman in every port condition, but says that there is a place in both my head and my heart for one special relationship, and for marriage and family. I hope, he adds, that relationship will not be based on sexual exclusivity or possessiveness, but rather will be symbiotic, catalyzing in terms of what each of us is reaching for. Wow, Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Celeste is going to answer for that.
Okay. And Bachelor number 3, Glebe Chutney of White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. Okay, Celeste Fremon, let's begin with you. You know, I never ask an author, and I interview a lot of authors. I always avoid the question, why did you write the book? But in the introduction, you tell such an interesting story that I'll give you that chance here. What possessed you in the first place?
Well, originally Simon & Schuster had called me and asked me to do this book, and I went, good heavens, how unintellectual. I couldn't dream of doing such a thing. However, I was just separating from the man that I had been living with for 2 years, and was kind of subject to the anxiety demons that you go through that wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say you're never going to find anybody else that you really love again, and there's nobody out there except creeps wearing honk if you love sex buttons.
Yeah. What was the publisher's intent? Naturally to sell books, but I mean, what did they...
Well, they wanted to do two purposes. One is that they felt it was a very interesting commercial idea to present very, very outstanding eligible men from all over the country. That was the to sell books part. And the other thing is we felt that women sure need to know more about men. This is the thing that was the most exciting for me in the course of doing the book, is that it was, for a woman who just come out of a relationship, it was very, very healing to talk to hundreds and hundreds of very interesting, highly varied, successful men, and talk to them about, you know, how they felt about themselves as men, and the struggles they were going through here in the last quarter of the 20th century, and how they felt about women and what they wanted in women. And as a matter of fact, another friend of mine had also broken up with the man in her life, and she's a very ardent feminist and sort of poo-pooed the idea of me doing this book. And I brought her a pile of the questionnaires when she was really going through a hard time, and she looked through them and, you know, sniffled for a while and then started smiling and said, there really is hope, isn't there? And it gave me a lot more empathy for what men are going through, and I think that someone reading through the book will discover a little bit more about what men are going through, particularly single men in America.
So it was a lot more than to offer 100 eligible bachelors to the female reading public.
Yeah, it's not really meant as a catalog, because you know, although it is fun to look through, and I'll come across women in the lobby of someplace where I work, and, you know, going, hey, look at this one. Now, he's not my type. I mean, and there's a lot of that. I mean, we're all human.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Did you meet anyone nice in the process?
Oh, I met 100 stupendous men, but did I meet anyone personally? No, I was feeling too vulnerable. I mean, I liked, to tell you the truth, I think I liked having the protection of being an interviewer.
Right.
And professionally, I wouldn't have felt comfortable with it, but of getting to ask hundreds of men the most intimate questions I could think of, and it was like having 100 great no-risk relationships.
Yeah. Okay. Fletcher, I'm sorry, Mr. Perfect. Let's move on.
Oh no.
To you. My guess is
I'm
that.
sorry I did it to you. I've never met this man before, and he'll never want to see me again. I've just talked to him on the phone.
I don't mean to be presumptuous or anything, but it seems to me it takes no small ego to agree to be included in a book like this. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think in the beginning, I didn't think of it in those terms. It was kind of fun to be asked, and it was a little bit of an ego thing, but it wasn't that big of a deal because you really know if it would materialize. All we did was talk over the phone, and it was just not that real to me. But since it's come out, it's a big ego thing. It's just really fun. Yeah, it's just been.
Describe a little bit of your bachelorhood for us. When you want to meet a girl, how do you go about doing it? A woman, I'm sorry. Well, I've been corrected on that a lot of times. I mean it. I really have to learn. I'm sorry. When you want to meet a woman, how do you...
It's usually by introduction. I'm very much like the book describes me. I'm usually... do it very formally. I'm usually introduced by friends. I see someone I'd like to meet, and I know someone else knows her. I usually ask them. And it's usually been kind of like that.
Right, I see. Okay, Mark, now, as we said, you're involved in international affairs. Did this appear a little frivolous for you? Where did you ever find time in your busy schedule even for the questionnaire?
It took me some months, actually. Celeste kept calling, saying, "Where's my questionnaire?"
Right.
Well, the questionnaire was relatively simple. She asked a lot of questions, gave a lot of room. I approached it in a frivolous way in the beginning because I, like Fletcher, wasn't really sure that this was a real project that was going to someday result in a real book. But she kept assuring me that it would. And, one did it not really expecting anything too much to come of it. And in my case, unlike Fletcher's, there's been a few letters and no packages.
I want to hear about those letters. How did you find these two guys in the first place?
Well, Mark I had met before because when I'm not writing books on eligible men, I'm a journalist, and Mark is an expert in Middle Eastern affairs, and I've done some work in that area, and I had met him. And my impressions... Basically what we did is we called women editors in regional newspapers and magazines and got lists from them. We got lists from, we called colleges and universities and asked them for the list of their most outstanding alums. We went through private lists, and then we culled them down and culled them. We called research facilities. We called NASA, which is eventually how we happened to run across Fletcher. And then we culled them down looking for men who were successful in their chosen field or were clearly stars on the rise, who were attractive men in the sense that, they had a good sense about them as men, not necessarily being Robert Redford clones. And men that had broadly based other interests, and that we have men from age 21 to age 60, and the men that are spread all over the country.
Okay. I want to find out exactly what the criteria is to be called an eligible bachelor. not just a bachelor, but an eligible one. I want to see some of those juicy letters you brought along, Fletcher. And I want to find out if I was still in the bachelor scene today, how I might do. Okay? All of that's coming up. We hope you'll stay with us. There's more of Good Morning Washington right after this. I'm determined to find someone in here I like. Okay. Today we're talking with Celeste Fremon, who along with her friends put together a book called The American Bachelor's Register. And I say along with your friends because you mentioned that in the introduction, that this was not a one-woman show.
It really couldn't be.
Yeah.
First, I would have died, number one. But number two, we wanted it to be something that my taste in men is very different from my friends and my editors, and so we...
Okay. The book's called The American Bachelor's Register. Two of those bachelors are with us today, Fletcher Reel and Mark Bruzonsky. Am I tackling that name correctly?
You're doing wonderfully.
Mark, how has being listed in the book helped you at all?
Helped me?
Yeah. Do you get... or how has it put you in contact with women?
Well, it really hasn't. As I said before, a few letters have come in. Fletcher was telling us before the show of some packages that came to him. So I've had no serious experiences from it. Plus, I've been, as you hinted before, the world of Middle East affairs is pretty complicated, and I've been pretty busy traveling.
How have your women friends responded to the fact that
That's a good question.
you're...
You're going to have to ask them. What have they said to me?
They're not here.
What
Yes,
have
all
they
right.
said to you?
I think they've looked at it partly in a frivolous way and partly as something that they wonder, just what you asked, how is it going to affect me, or will it change my relationships? It's a little bit early, actually. The book's only been out for some weeks, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And
People are just starting to get letters.
Yeah. You haven't made a date with someone then by being listed in the book?
no, I haven't
Okay.
even answered any
Right.
letters.
Now, Fletcher, you were kind enough, even though we didn't ask you, you brought along some letters, huh? And
I'm
he shows
dying
these
to
letters
see
to
them.
everybody he runs into. Can we see one of them, if you don't mind?
Well, I suppose. If you twist my arm. This is today's batch.
Oh, okay. Why don't you pick a nice one there and spare us the names, okay?
Okay.
Right.
Well, let's see. Here's one I got today from a local radio station, as a matter of fact, a girl that works there, or a woman that works there. Somewhat of a sexist, but anyway. Yeah, it's a really nicely typed business letter, sort of.
What's the thrust of it?
Basically, it hit on, I mentioned F. Scott Fitzgerald, and her interest is the Fitzgeralds in general, and Zelda in particular, and thought that'd be nice to get together and discuss Fitzgerald. So that's one of the more down-to-earth ones I've gotten. I've also gotten a series of letters from a secret admirer in Cincinnati, who's the one that sent me the packages and things like
What sorts
that.
of things did she send you?
Well, they're just very fun, very well-written letters describing herself and her interests and things like that. And she's talked about everything from football to literature.
No
And
kidding. Sound like someone you might like to meet?
Yeah.
Have you written her back?
No, most of the stuff has come and read. Well, she hasn't given me an address
Oh, really?
until just today, and then I think.
Are you going to write her back?
Yeah, I've answered all of the letters so far, which is not easy.
Have you met any of the women who wrote to you?
No, there's one, an interesting one, who introduced herself in the letter, and I've met her before. She doesn't remember me. I was a little bit hurt about that, but I know the girl, and she doesn't know that I know her. Okay. So I'm going to have to play with that one a little bit.
In Fletcher's bio in this book, he really goes into how much he loves Fitzgerald and some of the other classier aspects that you might run into a person. And just looking through the book, here we have a lobbyist researcher, a property investment advisor, a cancer counseling and research center administrator, an architect, president of a publishing division of a large city magazine. Is this the average, typical American male in here?
I think they represent what men are going through, but no, what I can say is, I mean, we certainly looked for men who were real interesting and real successful, and also not the kind of man that you'd ever find hanging out in a singles bar.
Oh, I see.
That the men that seem to, many of the men, now you guys are going to have to correct me, but one of the most interesting things to me that I found in the process of doing the book is that most all of the men I spoke with seemed to want a relationship of depth with women and weren't interested in just superficial sexual relationships, and in many cases had gone through that a lot and were a little horrified, with the exception of some of the younger men that were like 21, 22, and 23 clearly had a lot more experimenting that they wanted to do. But the rest of the men, whether they were looking for a permanent and committed relationship or not, they seemed to really like women, not just, quote, love them, but like them, need that contact and want it to be deep and intimate, which I found real nice.
But what about all of the intelligent cab drivers, the sensitive carpenters, all of the wonderful guys out there who don't make $50,000 a year?
Well, now, first of all, we had to set up some criteria, and so we did. And it was fun to do the book on men with highly varied interests, but there are lots of men in there that are not making a lot of money, but are doing something that truly interests them in their lives, whether it's there's a man in here named Bob Havis who is primarily he's a ski instructor, and he takes people on long whitewater river tours. But what he does as a ski instructor is he teaches handicapped people to ski, and he's a unique human being. And each one of these people is unique in very different ways, but it certainly doesn't mean they're wealthy. Another man in the book has started a private relief agency and brought the first private relief flights into Southeast Asia. And he's a sensitive, sexy, interesting man who also happens to be single. Yeah. But he's poor as a church mouse. We have the requisite heirs to great fortunes in there, and some self-made millionaires. But there's certainly lots of men that they're out there doing something that's interesting with their lives.
So then is having a neat job one of the criteria of being most eligible?
Well, eligibility, I'm sure, is in the eye of the beholder. But in writing a book on eligible men, a thing that we looked for, other than, of course, the fact that they weren't living with a woman, married, and so they were eligible for a relationship and weren't confirmed misogynists or aging Don Juans, which are sort of tiresome at any age. But also, we looked for men that would be fun to read about, that you'd enjoy getting to know. Okay. And there's one particular man in the book that protested bitterly, saying, "You don't want me. I'm not interesting enough." He has what sounds like an ordinary job. It's not glamorous. I mean, he works for the carpet company, but he's a very interesting, sensitive man, and we put him in there specifically to say, look, having a glamorous job or having lots of money is not a criterion.
I follow you. Time has gone all too quickly. Yeah, but in this final minute that we have here, Fletcher, can you briefly tell us, if a woman wants to meet you and impress you, what do you suggest she do?
Well, it's always, as Celeste said in the book, it's always fun if they're aggressive enough to have the nerve to come up and look you right in the eye and talk to you.
Yeah. How about you, Mark?
Oh, it's really a question of aliveness. It's not a question of what the person does or age. It's really a question of more sparkle in their eyes and how they approach life.
And whether or not you meet and whether or not you hit it off, I suppose, is all in the stars anyway. Thank you. Celeste, thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks,
it was fun. We'll be back. There's more coming up on Good Morning Washington right after this. is. Thank you very much. How's the rest? Certainly knows what he wants. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. What I said, he would have gotten big enough. I met him.